More money flows from families to the family courts and into the hands of courthouse insiders than in all the other court systems in America combined. Over $50 billion a year and growing. Custody evaluators extort money, and abusive judges play God with people's lives while enriching their friends inside the family court system. Resembling unregulated extra-constitutional medieval fiefdoms rather than assist victims of domestic relations law crimes, these family courts often participate in corruption rather than assist the needs of families in transition. This is unfortunately a fact. It is what it is. And today we're going to talk about advocacies and those things that we can do to reform the systems from those kinds of things happening. So I have with me on my left Catherine Waters from, what's the name of the radio thing again? I'm sorry.
Awake Radio.
It's not on here. I'm sorry.
And the show is called Organic News.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
It's on every Tuesday between, well, they change, the time difference.
I have to finish interviewing him. Good.
Okay.
Awake Radios. And then her left is Carl Ancesera, founder of Americans for Legal Reform. Regarding the advocacy, what is it that we can do, or let me just start with the first question, that'd be a good idea. We're all advocates at this table, whether we like it or not, and are we speaking for the people? I mean, that's something that I think about sometimes, because if I was fortunate enough to be successful trying to stop the courts from stealing from families, I would be happy. I can't think of anybody that wouldn't be happy, right? Wouldn't you be happy if all that corruption?
Most people aren't aware when they enter the courtroom, Supreme Court, with a judge or family court, that the objective of the court is to take as much money from you and transfer it to the lawyers and the judges in the room.
If you say that, you sound like a radical, but we know it's true.
Well, Americans for Legal Reform, the reason I started the organization more than 25 years ago was I was involved in a divorce, and the legal bills were more than $500,000 30 years ago, when $500,000 was a lot of money. And no one believed. You thought you would go to the courtroom and tell the judge the story, and he would understand it and make a fair decision.
And you go home.
And it would be over. But after 15 years of litigation, you realize that it isn't that way at all. It's far from the truth.
So your purpose of Americans for Legal Reform was more or less to do what I had just talked about in the opening, right?
To educate the people how to do it themselves, to what's ahead of them, so they can protect themselves and not put all their trust and their checkbook in the hands of the lawyer that they hire. We, for example, one of the things we advocate is never go to court alone. Always bring friends to the courtroom, witnesses to what's going on. Oh, I have my lawyer, everyone says. Your lawyer is not your friend. He's taken his oath to the judge, to the New York State, to the Bar Association. You're fifth on the and last on the list.
Yeah.
His obligation to you is least of all.
Yeah, the feeling that we have as a litigant before we go into court is that the focus is going to be on me. If I was stepping into court, the focus would be on me. Therefore, what I do is important. What I say is important. What I do or say is either the truth or working or not working, right?
Well, besides the focus being on you and your mate in the divorce,
I mean, that's what the litigant thinks about. They don't think about what you said.
More than 20% of the lawyers, as a known fact, have a substance abuse problem. They're alcoholics, they're drug addicts. In my case, I had two lawyers. Both of them, one was disbarred for drug addiction. The second one was an alcoholic. His girlfriend testified, befriended us, and said he was always in the bathroom putting coke in his nose. So, I mean, you're putting your trust in your children's lives in these people's hands?
Let's find out what she wants to do in your advocacy. What's your hope? What are you doing there with your radio show?
I started it, I come from a health perspective. I always have come from a health perspective. When all is said and done, when you strip off everything, it becomes a health issue. you know, for me, you know, I just kind of learned things early on, and everyone is human. I mean, people in positions of authority and power, I mean, they're people. And I mean, I kind of just learned to be on my own, sort of think for myself pretty early. And
but what is your what are you hoping to do with your radio show?
I wanted to bring a lot of people
today. You mean those kinds of issues, you mean?
A lot of people today are saying, finally, things that I was saying for a really long time. So it's as if, like, you know, call it politics, the economy, and all that stuff, and health are now coming together, and people are talking about, you know, the psychopaths, you know, in control. Like, that's, you know, and I'm like, yeah, yay, finally I get
health and mental health.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was a psych major. I read every book about relationship, you know, family health, you know, interpersonal relationships. Like, that was my passion my entire life, because, you know, like, I just got into this stuff because of my own personal experiences and the way that I grew up. You don't even, you know, families don't even exist anymore. So if you can't even have a healthy, you know, family system intact with people behind you, you know, in your own house.
So more or less, that's what your purpose is, to more or less awaken the souls of the human condition.
I mean, to just let people know you really have to take responsibility for your life and grow to your full potential. I mean, it's just, it's not really that complicated.
Well, you seem to have a street smarts. I can say for myself, I was as naive as could be. The judge is honest, the courtroom is a setting, policemen are honest. And
like I said, I think it's about us.
I found that, I mean, I found out recently, I discovered that people like to be lied to. And no one's better at lying to people than politicians and lawyers. That's what they learn how to do.
Protect themselves under scrutiny.
To protect themselves, and, oh, I can win your case. Oh, she should have never done this. We can, my naivety, even though I had a family and everything, was simply stupid. And the idea is to as an advocate, is to educate people before the axe falls on their head.
Did you ever think that maybe what I was saying before we started the show, when I talked about how far do we go when it comes to talking to or convincing the people that we're the voice, we're their voice?
You can't convince people, because they want to be lied to. People, they call it Obamacare. Well, God, there's nobody cares for you. They call it Child Protective Services.
Right.
No one's protecting your children.
That's right. See, it's kind of the opposite in a lot of ways.
It is. Well, I mean, they designed to call it one thing to completely throw you off.
Yeah, the safe.
While it's,
I have trouble believing, but if you could just do me a favor, 1 second, Carl. What she just said reminds me of the purpose. It isn't always bad intention, but if you were going to do something for somebody, wouldn't you want to call it the best thing that you could call it, like Child Protective Services? Use that as an example.
Well, they call them law guardians.
If you were going to do that, in the system that they have, it doesn't work. That's why we do what we do. We're doing that now because that doesn't work. It doesn't work by name, it doesn't work by function.
They recently passed in New York State the SAFE Act. There's 7,000 gun laws. So Mr. Cuomo is going to pass one more law that's going to make us all safe. Come on.
well, like,
and the public believes it?
The Benjamin Franklin quote, you know, has been coming up a lot lately. If you give up your freedom for security, you deserve neither. And that is extremely, I mean, when you think about it, it's really profound.
Sure.
You know, people haven't been taught. Like, I just tried to teach myself this stuff because I felt, you know, nobody was teaching me this stuff that I felt like I needed to learn, and it is basically about negotiating your own self-worth. Like, most people just think of worth in terms of, you know, the paper that they make up out of thin air. Like, no one teaches people self-worth and how to negotiate, how to feel good about yourself and really believe in yourself and have courage and stand up for your rights. I learned
See the tie-in between what you're saying and what you're saying. You're both actually doing something similar. You're more legal.
Well, it's
ours
all
is more self-oriented.
It's all just on the level or the scale that you're looking at it. Like I just, you know, come from like a basic scale, and then you know you scale it up and you end up, you know, where he is or where, you know, the Fed or the banks or, you know, the previous couple that were on before us. There's just all different levels, but ultimately it's all the same. I mean, it's either, you know, health or sickness. I mean, I was talking again to the gentleman that was sitting here before about the documentary Freedom to Fascism with Aaron Russo, and you know, I mean, you know, it's mafia. It's a cartel. The system, and it's all about just money and robbing the people, and it is the reality.
You hear what she's saying, right? So the average person is going to look at the viewer is going to look at her and go, how can she make that kind of assumption? But to us who have been in the advocacy for a long time, there's a belief system that we get it.
Well, she's talking about the mafia. Actually, I consider the mafia more honest than the politicians, because the mafia came up to you with a knife and said, your money or your life. You made a decision.
Yeah, you knew what you were
dealing with. But a judge or a lawyer says, your money for justice, and in the end, you get neither.
Because you keep fighting for the justice you're not going to get.
You're not going to get it.
You know, again, I always have to go back to a health issue. Like, everything for me is a health issue. But that's why you have to be in your instincts in the world. I mean, you know, you can't just take it for granted, you know, that when you see a police officer, you know, the uniform kind of throws you.
Means
you know,
something.
We've been so conditioned, you know, for that over and over and over again. And, you know, being that I live in the city, I live in Brooklyn, I ride the subway every day, and I cannot stand listening to the announcements on the subway every day about if you see something, say something. Oh, this is an announcement by the NYPD, and I, you know, and I literally. And I don't care if people on the subway think I'm crazy, but I have actually said out loud after they say that announcement, watch out for the government, you know, watch out for the NYPD, because...
Yeah, so Reagan that said the things you don't want to hear of the
government. Scariest words are,
the scariest words
I'm
the government, I'm here to help you.
I mean, first of all, the authority needs to be challenged. They are not above the laws of nature.
This is what we are.
Well, you know, they want to be above the laws of physics, and they're not.
They want to be unaccountable. We have Americans for legal reform have no qualms with the police department, because if they do something wrong, there's civilian review boards. But the judiciary is unaccountable to everyone, and 65% of all government is lawyers. They're unaccountable. There's supposed to be 3 branches of government. The 4th branch has become the Bar Association, and they're accountable to no one.
Go back to the Civilian Review Board. That makes sense to me. I mean, how does that not make sense?
Because
it's like a jury. When you go to family court, you don't have a jury.
The doctors are accountable to civilians, but lawyers are only accountable to their buddies in the legal profession. They all went to the same school. There is no accountability. And the bottom line is that lawyers are controlling every branch of government in our entire lives. They can say what clothes we wear, it's illegal to do this, it's illegal. Every single thing we do. And once we realize that, we understand why Gulliver wrote the books about Gulliver's travels hundreds of years ago.
If I could just say, this thought came to my mind. It comes up a lot, you know, when you were talking about court and people that end up in court. Again, like the previous guests that were on, I mean, people like them, they're having their personal experience of a hell. So to them, there's no question that there's something seriously wrong going on.
Right.
And the problem is, and it's unfortunate that unless it happens like that to people, like they don't want to believe it, or even if
that's what I was saying before. It sounds like a conspiracy.
But the thing, you know, it brings me back to one of my favorite quotes, and it's by James Madison, and he talks about that it's the slow and gradual that is more dangerous than the sudden and the violent.
Right.
I mean, he doesn't say it that way, he says it a little bit different. But so things that happen slowly and gradually over time, people don't, you know, recognize. And, you know, it's that whole frog in the boiling water thing.
Yeah, right.
And like the previous couple that was sitting here, like they're getting jolted awake. Like they know that the pot is starting to boil and they're making an attempt to jump out.
That's good,
Before
good
it
analogies
started,
too. Good analogies.
before it happened to them, if we went up to them and said, "Watch out, someone can take your house,"
They would have went, nah.
You're a wacko. What are you talking about?
Right.
Unless you have cancer, you don't understand.
But that's our
cancer.
experience. This is why this show has its purpose, because if we can't move the uninformed or the people who have not yet been bothered by this, then what are we doing?
Well, that's
This is
the
why I
problem.
want to get this across.
That's the problem. The people we meet at Americans for Legal Reform is after the destruction. They're broke, they're destroyed, their mental health is
and
destroyed.
least able to contribute back to you, which was another
They can't
thing,
help
the money.
themselves and they can't help someone else.
Do we need, there's costs incurred to run organizations, advocacies to help other people. It costs, if you, to come here, train, whatever it might be, it's cost.
Of course you have
Right.
need money, but you need people. 50% of the population has been divorced. We have our meetings, and you think the room should be packed with 50% of the population.
Like
But
$50
once they're
billion,
finished,
and $50 billion in the family law, the court
They
system,
throw-
$50 billion.
just throw your money
And
into
growing.
the courtrum and leave. It
do
would
the-
be easier.
Why do the people spend the money? I mean,
You know, what is it? It's access. The government provided, this is why I was so brought up the Reagan thing, the government provided access for the systems to come into our existence to take what they can.
it's
Well,
like a
if you-
trap. I mean, people should just do things on their own. I mean, why can't you
That's
just
why I'm a
do-
mediator, because I want to try
if
to
you-
entice people to save their money, not to throw it
mean,
away.
If you go to
It's a trap.
the
It's a-
South
it's a
American
trap.
countries, there's bull rings in every town. And when there's a bull ring, there's bullfights. The more rings you have, the more bullfights. Here in this country, they make more courthouses. The more courthouses there are, they fill them up. There's more people that want to
Yeah,
fight.
if you look at the court systems, if you look at the court system on our place on Long Island here is growing every year. The parking lot's growing every year because there's more and more reasons for people to be there. It's a very bad sign for government. There's more
Now they
parking
want-
lot attendants, more
They
court officers.
want to outlaw Pepsi-Cola and legalize marijuana.
Yeah.
Excuse me? What do you think is going to happen to the courtrooms?
Yeah. Go
Oh,
ahead.
that sounds like not a bad idea. Yes,
Maybe.
But,
Healthy person that
and
she is.
Pepsi-Cola, I mean, that stuff is like poison. But I mean, it all just falls under the umbrella of, you know, just crony capitalism and profits before people. And
Well, they do it under the guise of collecting more taxes. They made more casinos, so they would collect more taxes. What has been done with all the tax money?
yeah,
They've-
wars.
Yeah, right.
Do you have
And
you guys
killing
have any
innocent people.
great ideas that
Excuse
are
me,
going to go by the
Chris,
board? Yeah.
I just recently on the radio, San Francisco, the fire women in San Francisco earn $300,000 a year.
That's
Wow.
incredible.
300,000. The chief makes 350,000 a year, and he was recently quoted as saying, "We deserve it." Imagine what his
crap.
pension
Oh
fund
my
is.
God.
Yeah.
Where are we going?
That's the problem.
Not that they don't deserve it, but why does a soldier in Afghanistan make 40,000 a year?
Right.
Right.
What are we doing?
Well, it's the same thing with corporations. I mean, the CEOs, right? They don't work like 10 times harder than the workers.
Well, not 10, it's 100 times.
Right.
They get paid 100 times more. But the movie stars and the football players, why did
Yeah.
they deserve
Yeah.
100 million?
I call it-
They're all collective bargaining people. If you notice, the big numbers are starting to go towards collective bargaining jobs and unions and people that have that
I mean, where are our children going to be when they grow up?
broke and unable to look on Long Island. They can't even afford a house.
It's passing down the debt. I mean, that's why you got to have kids, because somebody's got to pay the bill. I mean, that's what it's turned, like, literally become.
We've just talked about. I'm sorry, Carl. Just 1 second. We just talked about a bunch of ideas that could work. in my eyes, a lot of things that are really good quality ideas that should be tested in our fields never get to the table because they're either too costly for them to give up what they have, or they don't want to give up what they have and they don't want to venture into something else that might cost more money. Whatever it is, it's about the dollar. Meanwhile, it's okay to take all the dollars from John Q. Public. You see the dichotomy here, right? We're going to have this problem is already before us. So if we can't figure out a way to break that plane, we're going to be stuck.
I mean, it's going to be very difficult. I mean, it's like learning how to live, like learning how to walk all over again. But the people have to just start learning to come together and unplugging from the system. I mean,
our forefathers
said, because we're the ones that are fueling it.
Unplugging this from the system is a good keyword.
Our forefathers said that every once in a while you have to have a good revolution.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cleanse. It's like a colonize.
You can't just.
You
can't just be making laws. Last year, there were 80,000 pages of new laws, and you're responsible to know them. They have no expiration date. It's not like milk; they go expire, and then you throw them out and get a new quart. No, they go on forever.
When you drive up the expenses so high on anything that occurs, like bridges and tunnels, for instance, a lot of our bridges need to be changed. Where are you going to get the money from? They won't do it because it's going to cost too much money. So where's it going to cost? Where's the money going to come from? It always falls back on the taxpayers. So you get the taxpayers who are already overburdened to create more tax dollars to pay for bridges that really do need to be repaired. What happened to government? Well, government got bigger and did nothing.
Government got taken over by the corporations and the banks.
With huge salaries and huge pensions and huge benefits. And
government has been taken over.
It's a monster that keeps eating, and you can't stop the monster because it's lawyers. They know what to do.
You have to figure out a way to get to that point, though, Carl. Because I mean, like any good quality advocacy that has a great idea, it's going to be spoiled by things like this.
This type of show, if it can help one person to open their eyes, maybe we can save a life. I don't know.
It's very good of you to say that because I mean that's what I hope I'm doing, but. Where is the marker that somebody calls? Oh, I do get calls every now and then, but very rarely to thank you for telling me blah, 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 I didn't know such and such, you know, now I'm aware of blankety blank, whatever it may be.
People also really need to realize where money comes from because that's what everything is always about. You know, like, do people realize that money is actually a note of debt and that the Federal Reserve is a privately owned bank that creates money out of nothing and makes money out of nothing? Most people are not aware of things like this. I mean, it's, you know, there are plenty of places to find this stuff. There are plenty of...
The government's doing it now. You want some more money? We'll just print it right up for you. So.
I mean...
Another couple of billion. If you're spending $4 trillion a year more than you're bringing in taxes, where's it going to come from?
So it doesn't have any value, and people are killing themselves for a piece of paper that literally is on the debt side. You know, it literally has no value.
No value anymore, sure.
Right. If there was no money in circulation, if nobody owed anybody anything, there would be no money in circulation. I mean, watch Zeitgeist Addendum. Watch.
Yeah, we survive off of our debt. You're saying, yeah.
I mean, yeah, debt is what keeps everything going.
It's a manipulator to the government to the.
Right, it's a complete
economic cycle.
Scheme.
To the economic cycle.
It's a Ponzi scheme.
I'm putting all my money in bitcoins.
It's an alternative. I mean, it takes power away from the powers that be.
One of the things we can do, as a reminder in your group, so maybe you can think about this too, is if you're having trouble getting something done, join forces with another group. I mean, it's an idea. I know you guys went with HALT, right? We went with HALT.
We originally started with HALT. We went down to Florida, met groups down there, had over 150 groups.
So we could help her, she could help us. I mean, there's things we can all do for each other. We have to network
with each other.
I mean, that's one way to save.
You can't stand alone.
No, that's one way our advocacies can support ourselves.
That's the only way politicians listen, is the number of votes that are affecting.
See, you know, I mean, that's not my line of thinking. Is like, to me, I would just eliminate politicians and I think people should just do everything on their own, because trying to, you know, it's like trying to have a relationship with a drug addict. You just become like a codependent enabler. It's
look at us. I mean, do you actually talk to any politicians at all? I do, and I know Carl does. But we are the exceptions rather than the rule. Most people they don't even know who their politician is. But there's so many of them, like you said. What do we need them for when you think about it?
I mean,
Why do you need so many?
So many.
Of them?
Overlapping government's another problem. We have local government, then we have town government, then we have state government, and we have federal government.
And as I said, many of them are lawyers. If you want a lawyer to govern you, then vote for one.
If I could just throw this in before we have to end. I just came back from, we tried to get into Gaza with an organization called Code Pink, you know, just advocating for people that are completely being bullied, you know, over in the Middle East. And I mean, I'm not an expert on this subject at all, but 100 peace delegates, mostly women from all around the world, Belgium, Switzerland, Ireland, came to Cairo and were deported. About 80% were deported and not allowed in, and just a couple of handfuls of us got in, even though the Egyptian government knew in advance that we were coming, and nobody really expected that getting into Egypt and Cairo would be the difficult part. Getting into Gaza would have been.
And you never made it there, right? Your intentions were to go there, and you ended up being stuck in Egypt, right?
Right. And they did. The border was closed, and they did open it while we were there. But then, you know, everything is for your safety, you know.
Yeah, for your safety.
I mean, not. I don't want to like minimize that over there in the Sinai.
Yeah.
But you know, I think they just can use that as a, you know, an excuse.
Not much is going to happen though there. I mean, if we can't get people like yourselves in there, some peaceful people looking to try to make change. Look how many restrictions we have all over the world. Look how many restrictions we have here in our own country now. These things didn't occur years ago. There was a hell of a lot more success with advocacies 20, 40, 50 years ago.
We've been doing it for 25 years. It's worse now than it was 25 years ago.
This is my point, yeah.
Technology
my point is our
makes people lazy. Like, they get too comfortable and they're sidetracked.
There's also no more civil education in the high school systems. I've been fighting this for a long time. I can't seem to get anybody to entertain.
Well, as Bob Schultz said at a recent meeting, the New York State Constitution says we're supposed to teach the students the state constitution. There isn't one school that teaches it. Anyone that graduates high school doesn't know there's a New York State Constitution.
Right.
I didn't know it.
Yeah.
Who knew it until?
Yeah, I only found out about 20 years ago myself. Yeah.
Does
a lot of people don't know.
Does anyone follow it?
I don't know. But we have, as advocates for the systems that we advocate for, some of the things we can do, we've hopefully let the audience know just now, but I can't give this up because I believe in it with passion, I think, and that's the single feature, I think, about us that survives all other people. We have the passion to try to make something happen.
You got to light the fire of people. And
we're going to die with our boots on.
Yeah.
I hope it's not too late. I mean, I try not to be a pessimist, but sometimes
we're in the fight. I want to thank you very much, Catherine Waters from Awake Radio, and Carl Lantisera, Americans for Legal Reform. Societal and political trends are rapidly breaking down the family that once was the cornerstone of our great American culture. At FIT, we know you cannot get this information on your own, so we'll bring it to your TV every week. My name is Chris DiMaggio. Thank you for watching FIT TV, and we'll see you again next week.